Hello. So this is our second set of notes for the semester about energy. And I told y'all in class the other day that basically the rest of this semester we're going to spend time talking about each of the different forms of energy in more detail. But for right now, we want to break down energy into several different ways that it shows itself in everyday life. And this is more than just the two categories of potential and kinetic, which is what we've been working on so far. So I just want you to know that the quiz that we're taking about potential and kinetic energy does not include this set of notes. So don't freak out and don't worry about having to memorize all of these in one night, because we'll have plenty of time to work on them later. So the first type of energy that we'll talk about right now, and we're actually going to save this until about March or April, is light energy. This is energy that travels in something called a transverse wave, and if we could see these waves, it would kind of look like a jump rope that has a wave going through it. Another word for light energy is called radiant or electromagnetic energy, so it has a lot of little nicknames. So some examples of light energy, kind of obvious if you just look around the world. You can look at your room or wherever you happen to be sitting right now. You can probably identify a lot of things that have light energy. So a couple that you can write down right now are light bulbs and candles. In the classroom in the past, I've had students saying the projector is an example, or the smart board, computer monitor. You have a flashlight on your phone. So those are a lot of examples of things that have light energy. Next example is heat energy, and we're actually going to be talking about this in just a couple of weeks, which is kind of ironic because it's the coldest time of the year. So heat energy involves the kinetic energy of moving or vibrating molecules, so basically how much they move around and knock into each other. And another word for this is thermal energy. So if you can think of like a thermos or thermometer, thermostat, they all have the same root word, which involves heat. So some examples of things that have heat energy, in the winter time, if you have a house that has a fireplace, a lot of times people will use that fireplace to help warm the house. You may have a radiator or one of those space heaters in your house to help warm everything up. And you can probably think of some other things that put off heat that you can add to your list of things that you think of on your own. Now we have chemical energy too. I think we mentioned this in class. These are energy that's held in chemical bonds. So basically, if there's a chemical reaction, a lot of times it involves breaking apart bonds or putting them together, and that all involves chemical energy. Examples of things that have chemical energy are batteries. So they have a chemical inside that creates electricity later. You also have fossil fuels like coal and petroleum and gasoline. Cars run on gasoline, so they use chemical energy. Some other examples we've talked about in class include like food. That's a big example that you can use in order to have energy yourself. It's kind of like fuel for your body. Okay. Next type of energy is electrical energy. We'll talk about this more in the spring also. This involves the energy of moving electrons. And there's several different ways that we see electricity in our lives. One natural way we see electrical energy is through lightning during storms. We also have electrical energy through power lines. You can think of basically anything that you would need to plug in is something that uses electrical energy. So just think about the things around you that are plugged in that you have to use right now. If you're on the computer, that's something. If you're on a phone that has to be charged, that's something that uses electrical energy. Just look around your room, or if you're in your kitchen or something like that, just make some notes of things that you see around you that are plugged into the wall, and those are some things that have electrical energy. The next one is mechanical energy. That's kind of what we're talking about right now because of the energy involving position and motion. So this is potential and kinetic. So we're actually becoming masters of this type of energy currently. So examples of mechanical energy, sound is actually mechanical energy because it is moving molecules that are moving in waves from the person that's making the sound or whatever is making the sound to your ear, and your ear is able to kind of translate the vibrations of the air into sound for you. This bike rider, this little turtle riding a bike, that's an example of mechanical energy. There's a lot of moving parts in a bike, but also because this turtle is riding a bike, he has kinetic energy. So if you want to just list a bunch of examples that we've used in class lately involving potential energy or kinetic energy, that might be a good idea. It would be helpful for you for your quiz tomorrow. The last type of energy is nuclear energy, and we're actually going to have a little bit of more detail in another video this week that helps us understand nuclear energy and kind of tie in last semester and bridge the gap between chemistry and physics, which is what we've been talking about lately. So nuclear energy is contained in the nucleus of an atom. So we're talking about molecules and atoms and protons, neutrons, and electrons. There are two types of nuclear energy, and they're called fission and fusion. So we'll learn a lot about the differences between those later this week. So some examples of nuclear energy. One of the main things, like if we were in class and I asked you what you thought of if I said something about nuclear energy, people might think of nuclear weapons. That's something that's going on in the world today. The sun actually is an example of nuclear energy. Basically, any type of star is powered by nuclear energy, and we'll get into some more detail with that later. Some other examples include nuclear power. So that's kind of like it's more expensive version of power, but it's also cleaner because it doesn't put out a lot of pollution. And again, we'll get into more discussions about that in class later on this week. So we've got these 6 types, and again, we're going into more detail as we slowly go through the semester, but I wanted to make sure we have an overview of each type first. In the next couple of days, we'll talk about how these types can change from one to another, and we might notice that some of the examples we used might actually fit into several different categories, and that's okay, because a lot of times there are conversions, and again, we'll get into that more in the next couple of videos that we have. So until then, I'll see you later, and make sure that you have these notes ready to be checked in class tomorrow. Have a good one.